Assalamualaikum. Today we start the oral mucosa. Most important chapter in oral histology. One question या two questions इसमें से oral mucosa में से आपके एनुअल एग्जाम में आते हैं. एनकेट में से आपको पढ़ाया जा रहा है oral mucosa chapter 12. What is the oral mucosa? What is the oral mucosa? Oral mucosa are the moist lining of the oral cavity that is in continuation with the exterior surface of skin on one end and esophagus. On the other end is called the oral mucosa or oral mucous membrane. Oral mucosa another what is the functions of the oral mucosa. Number one is it is protective mechanically against both compressive and shearing forces. It provides a barrier to microorganisms, toxins, and various antigens. It has a role in immunological defense, both humoral and cell mediated. Spinal glands within the oral mucosa provide lubrication and buffering as well as secretion of some antibodies. The mucosa is richly innervated, providing input for touch, proprioception, pain, and taste. Reflexes such as gagging, retching, and salivating are initiated by the receptors in the oral mucosa. This is the functions of the oral mucosa. Movement of oral mucosa, primitive oral cavity develops by fusion of embryonic stomodium with foregut after rupture of buccopharyngeal membrane at 26 days intrauterine. ठीक है, क्या है 20 डेज में इंट्रायूटरल लाइफ में ये स्टार्ट हो जाता है. Structures from branchial arches like tongue, epiglottis, and pharynx covered by epithelium derived from endoderm. Covering palate, cheeks, and gingiva of ectodermal origin. 5 to 6 weeks, 2 layers of cells have formed lining oral cavity. ठीक है, 26 डेज में से स्टार्ट हो जाता है. 5 to 6 weeks में क्या है कि 2 layer of cells have formed lining the oral cavity. 8 weeks in area of vestibular dental lamina complex, extracellular reticular fibers accumulate.
Yes.
8 weeks are thickening in area of vestibular dental lamina complex, extracellular reticular fibers accumulate, and 10 to 14 weeks cellular degeneration forming oral vestibule. ठीक है, 5 to 6 weeks में क्या है कि 2 layers of cells have formed lining the oral cavity. 8 weeks में क्या होगा, thickening in the area of vestibular dental lamina complex, extracellular reticular fibers accumulate. In 10 to 14 weeks, cellular degeneration forming the oral vestibule. 8 to 11 weeks, palatal cells elevate and close, capillary buds and collagen fibers detected. At this time, morphology of future mouth is apparent. 7 weeks, circumvallate and foliate papilla appears followed by fungiform. 10 weeks, filiform papilla appears. ठीक है, 7 weeks में क्या होगा कि सर्कमवेलेट जो टंग के ऊपर पेपिलास होते हैं इसमें क्या है सर्कमवेलेट एंड फोलिएट पेपिला क्या है 7 weeks में अपेयर होना शुरू होते हैं और 10 weeks में फिलीफॉर्म पेपिला अपेयर. 10 to 12 weeks, future lining and masticated mucosa, stratification of epithelium and different morphology. Areas destined to become keratinized have darkly staining columnar basal epithelium. Epithelial cells in areas of which are lining mucosa retain cuboidal cells. 13 to 20 weeks, all oral epithelia thicken with appearance of sparse keratohyalin granules. Melanocytes and Langerhans cells appear. Surface layers show parakeratinization. Orthokeratinitis occurs only after eruption of teeth postnatal. 17 to 20 weeks, completely formed with appearance of elastic fibers in the ectomesenchyme. Boundaries of the oral mucosa. ठीक है, oral mucosa की boundaries क्या होंगी? The oral cavity consists of two parts. Number one is the outer vestibule. Second is the oral cavity proper. Outer vestibule bounded by the lips and cheek. Oral cavity proper separated by the alveolus bearing teeth and ginger. Fairly hard and soft palate. Inferiorly floor of mouth, base of tongue. Posteriorly pillars of fauces and tonsils. Okay, boundaries of oral mucosa क्या होंगी? Two types होंगे. Number one is the two parts होंगे. Number one is the vestibule and second is the oral cavity proper. Outer vestibule में क्या होगा? Bounded by the lips and cheeks and oral cavity proper separated by the alveolus bearing teeth and gingiva. Sparely क्या होगा? Hard और soft palate होंगे. Inferiorly क्या होगा? Floor of mouth, base of the tongue. और posteriorly क्या होगा? Pillar of fauces and tonsils. This is the underside of the tongue. This is the gingiva, floor of mouth, lower lip. Three main types of mucosa identifying according to their primary function. Number one is the masticative mucosa, second is the lining mucosa, and third is the specialized mucosa. Masticative mucosa क्या है 60% होगा और lining mucosa 25% and specialized mucosa 15%. Three types of the oral mucosa. Types are primary functions. Number one is the masticative mucosa, second is the lining mucosa, and third is the specialized mucosa. Masticative mucosa 60% and lining mucosa 25% and specialized mucosa 15%. Oral mucous membrane classification are two types of the keratinized, non-keratinized and specialized mucosa. Keratinized mucosa में क्या आएगा? Masticative mucosa. Masticative mucosa में क्या आएगा? Number one is the gingiva and hard palate. नॉन कैटिनाइज म्यूकोजा जो लाइनिंग म्यूकोजा है इसमें क्या होगा? फ्रीमली अटैच्ड, ठीक है, और सेकंड इज द लूजली अटैच्ड. फ्रीमली अटैच में क्या होगा? सॉफ्ट पैलेट, ठीक है, सेकंड इज द लिप, थर्ड इज द चीक and fourth is the ventral surface of tongue. ठीक है. Non-keratinized mucosa, lining mucosa, two types, firmly attached and loosely attached. Firmly attached में क्या होगा? Soft palate होगा, lip होगा, cheeks होगा और ventral surface of tongue.
Oh,
In
hello.
and loosely attached clinical features क्या होंगे? Although continuous with skin, oral mucosa differs in a number of ways. Color, ठीक है, नंबर वन इज द कलर. Oral mucosa is more deeply colored, most obviously at the lips. Concentration and state of dilation of blood vessels, thickness of epithelium, degree of keratinization, amount of melanin pigment. ठीक है, क्लिनिकल फीचर्स क्या होंगे आपके ओरल म्यूकोजा मेम्ब्रेन के? नंबर वन इज द कलर. ओरल म्यूकोजा इज मोर डीपली कलर्ड, मोस्ट ऑब्वियसली एट द लिप्स. Concentration and state of dilation of blood vessels, thickness of epithelium, degree of keratinization, amount of melanin pigment. Voice surface and absence of appendages, glandular component of oral mucosa represented by minor salivary glands, occasional sebaceous glands in upper lip and buccal mucosa, podaceous spots, smoother surface and fewer wrinkles, papilla on dorsum tongue, and transverse ridges of palate. This is the clinical features of the oral mucosa. Component tissues are stratified squamous epithelium, oral epithelium, epidermis, connective tissue layer, lamina propria, interface upward projections of connective tissue. Connective tissue papilla interdigitates with the epithelial ridges, with ridges are with wicks. Typical hematoxylin eosine stains shows this interface as a structure, less layer about 1 to 2 microns thick basement membrane. The junction between oral epithelium and lamina propria is obvious, unlike that between oral mucosa and underlying tissue. Oral mucosa has no muscular mucosa. In cheeks, lips, and parts of hard palate, a layer of loose fatty glandular tissues containing vessels and nerves supplying the mucosa separates the oral mucosa from underlying bone or muscles. This is the submucosa. In gingiva and parts of hard palate, oral mucosa directly attached to underlying the bone. This provides a firm and elastic attachment. It's called the mucoperiosteum. Okay? Oral mucosa has no muscular mucosa. In cheeks, lips, and parts of the hard palate, a layer of loose fatty glandular tissues containing vessels, nerves, and mucosa separate the oral mucosa from underlying bone or muscles, the submucosa. And mucoperiosteum in gingiva and parts of the hard palate, oral mucosa directly attached to underlying bone. This provides a firm elastic attachment. This is called mucoperiosteum. Glands. Minor salivary glands in semicosa. Sebaceous glands in lamina propria produce sebum said to lubricate the surface of the mucosa. There might actually be in embryonic anomaly. Nodules of lymphoid tissue are present in various areas consisting of crypts formed by invaginations of epithelium into lamina propria. Capillaries carry adhesion molecules like endothelial cell leukocyte adhesion molecule, intercellular adhesion molecule, and vascular cell adhesion molecule. These facilitate trafficking of leukocytes, lymphocytes, and plasma cells from blood, found as lingual, palatine, and pharyngeal tonsils forming Walden's ring. Small nodules also in soft palate, ventral surface of tongue, floor of mouth. Epithelium. It is derived from the embryonic ectoderm. The cells vary from cuboidal to flat squamous cells. The epithelium may be keratinized or non-keratinized depending upon the functional requirements. Keratinized epithelium may be ortho or parakeratinized. Okay, two types of the orthokeratinized and parakeratinized. Epithelial cells are called keratinocytes as they contain within the cell fine filaments called the tonofilaments. Okay, what is the tonofilaments? Epithelial cells are called keratinocytes as they contain within the cell फाइन फिलामेंट्स जो होंगे उनको हम क्या कहेंगे, टोनोफिलामेंट्स. These are fibrous proteins synthesized by the ribosomes. When tonofilaments form bundles of filaments, they are called tonofibrils. ठीक है, टोनोफिलामेंट्स जो फिलामेंट्स बंडल्स फिलामेंट्स बनाएंगे उनको हम क्या कहेंगे, टोनोफिब्रिल्स. Tonofilaments are formed in keratinized epithelium only. Bundles of tonofilaments attached to an intercellular thickening called the attachment plaque. Called the bundles of tonofilaments attached to an intercellular thickening called attachment plaque, which in turn adhere to oval R circular area of adjacent cell membrane called the desmosome. This is called the desmosome. Okay? Oval or circular area of adjacent cell membrane called desmosome. The attachment of epithelial cells to one another is by desmosome. The attachment of epithelial cells to connective tissue is by hemidesmosome. Basal lamina separates the epithelium and lamina propria. It has an upper clear layer called lamina lucida in contact with the basal cells of the epithelium and lower dense layer called the lamina densa. ठीक है, जो क्लियर लेयर होगी उसे क्या कहेंगे, लेमिना ल्यूसिडा, in contact with the basal cells of the epithelium, and lower dense layer called the lamina densa, which is contact with the reticular layer of lamina propria. The cells of the basal cell layer are connected to the lamina lucida by the hemidesmosomes. Oral epithelium constitutes primary barrier between oral environment and deeper tissues. Oral epithelium is a stratified squamous epithelium consisting of cells tightly attached to each other and arranged in a number of distinct strata. Maintains its structural integrity by a process of continuous cell renewal. Cell produced by mitotic divisions in deepest layers and replace those that are shed. Thus, there are two populations of cells: progenitor population and maturing population. Types of cells होंगे, ठीक है, progenitor population and maturing population. Oral epithelial homeostasis. Epithelial proliferation कैसे होगी? Proliferation in thin epithelia progenitor cells seen in basal layer. ठीक है, जो थिन एपिथेलियम होंगे उसमें आपको जो प्रोगेनेटर सेल्स नजर आएंगे इन बेसल लेयर. In thicker epithelia seen in lower 2-3 cell layers. Series on epidermis and oral epithelium indicate that the progenitor compartments consist of two functionally distinct subpopulations. A small population of slowly cycling stem cells retains proliferative potential. A large population of amplifying cells increase numbers of cells available for maturation. Turnover time taken for a cell to divide and pass through the entire thickness of epithelium, 50 to 75 days in skin, 4 to 14 days in gut, 41 to 57 days in gingiva, and 25 days in cheek. The surface of gingiva tendons after labeling proliferating basal cells with H3 thymidine. Many of the cells have passed to the outer surface and become keratinized cells. Turnover is 10 to 12 days. Mitotic activity affected by the epidermal growth factor, keratinocyte growth factor, interleukin 1, transforming growth factors, time of the day, stress, and inflammation. Epithelial maturation. The patterns of maturation are two types, keratinization and non-keratinization. Keratinized epithelium are four types: stratum basilar, stratum spinosum, stratum granulosum, and stratum coronium. Okay, four types. Number one is the stratum basilar, stratum spinosum, stratum granulosum, and stratum coronium. This is the stratum coronium. This is the stratum granulosum. This is the stratum spinosum. This is the stratum basilar. This is a lamina propria. The oral epithelium keratinized. Stratum basilar. क्या है? They are present above the basement membrane. They have cuboidal arc cells. Cells of the basal layer shows most mitotic activity. This layer is also called germinative layer. They are attached to the basement membrane by the hemidesmosomal junction. Stratum spinosum arranged in several rows. Cells are larger, elliptical or spherical in shape. Cells are fused together due to the presence of intercellular bridges or desmosomes. Cells of spinous layer are joined together by intercellular bridges, giving the cells a prickly appearance. They contain glycolipids originating from the Golgi complex. That is a stratum granulism. Cells of stratum granulism are flat and are found in layers of 3 to 5 cells thick. This layer is prominent in keratinized epithelium and absent in non-keratinized epithelium. Cells have keratohyalin granules in their cytoplasm. Keratohyalin granules helps to form the matrix of the keratin fibers found in the superficial layer. Stratum corneum cells are flat, divide or nuclear and full of keratin filament surrounded by a matrix. These cells are continuously being sloughing and are replaced by epithelial cells that migrate from the underlying layers. The cells are usually dehydrated. In case of orthokeratinoids layer, there is no retention of nuclei. In parakeratinoids layer, there is a retention of nuclei. Non-keratinized epithelium, stratum basilar, stratum intermedium, stratum superficial, stratum distendum. Stratum basilar, this layer is similar to that of keratinized epithelium. Only difference is that the cells of this layer is in non-keratinized epithelium are slightly larger than that of keratinized epithelium. Intercellular bridges are less conspicuous. Stratum intermedium glycogen is present. Daily keratohyalin granules are also visible at this level, but they are not associated with tonofilaments. Stratum superficial cells appear slightly more flattened than other layers. They contain dispersed tonofilaments and nuclei and dehydrated cells. This surface is flexible and tolerant of the compression and distension. Keratinized and non-keratinized mucosa, four types. This is a stratum corneum, this is a stratum canealism, this is a stratum spinosum, and stratum basal. This is a keratinized epithelium. Non-keratinized epithelium, this is a stratum superficial, official, keratine hyaline canealism, stratum intermedium, and stratum basal. Basal. The lamina propria, found below the epithelium, has two parts and are papillary and reticular. Papillary portion is a projection of the connective tissue into the epithelium. Increase in length of papilla is seen in areas where additional mechanical adhesion is required between epithelium and connective tissue. For example, masticated mucosa. Reticular portion is present below this layer. This contain mainly collagen fibers, blood capillaries. Actually, this is the lamina propria. Uh, this is a papillary layer. Second is the reticular layer and submucosa. और दिस इज द मोलेकुलर जो है क्या है लेमिना प्रोपेरा. ठीक है, लेमिना प्रोपेरा क्या है फाउंड बिलो द एपिथेलियम. टू पार्ट्स होते हैं पेपिलरी एंड रेटिकुलर. पेपिलरी पोर्शन इज प्रोजेक्शंस ऑफ कनेक्टिव टिश्यू इनटू द epithelium. Increase in length of papilla seen in areas where additional mechanical adhesion is required between epithelium and connective tissue. Reticular portion is present below this layer. ठीक है, पेपिलरी लेयर के नीचे जो होगा वो क्या होगा, रेटिकुलर लेयर होगी. This contain mainly collagen fibers and blood capillaries. Keratinocytes constitute the major part of epithelial cells. The cells are arranged in different layers. During maturation, they either change to keratin or share in keratin formation. These cells have the following criteria always present in sheets. ठीक है, कैसे present होंगे in sheets attached to each other by one or more type of cellular junctions. Cytoplasm of these cells is stained with the hematoxylin and eosin. Cytoplasm contains the tonofilaments. Non-keratinocytes are present in both keratinized and non-keratinized epithelium and have the following criteria. Number one is appear as clear cells by ordinary hematoxylin and eosin stain. They need special stains. Clear present as scattered cells and not in sheets. Clear hollows around their nuclei. Their cytoplasm is free from tonofilaments. No cellular junctions. Do not play any role in synthesis of keratohyalin granules or keratin. The structure of epithelial cell. An important property of any epithelial cell is its ability to function as a barrier. This is brought about by tonofilaments, desmosomes, and hemidesmosomes. Ceramides, cholesterol, and the long chain fatty acids also regulate the membrane permeability. Characteristic structures for epithelial cells include filamentous strands called the tonofilaments, intercellular bridges, or desmosomes. Tonofilaments are fibrous protein synthesized by the ribosomes, long filaments with a diameter of 8 nanometer, chemical cytokeratins. Cytokeratin functions as components of cytoskeleton and cell contacts. All stratified oral epithelia process cytokines 5 and 14. Keratinized oral epithelium contain cytokines 1, 6, 10, and 16. Non-keratinized contents 4, 13, and 19 may be important in maintaining metabolic homeostasis of cell. Recent research on keratins and cell surface marks has focused on early identification of aberrant maturation, like in case of cancer. Cell to cell adhesion in junctions, adherence junctions, actin filaments attachment sites, desmosomes intermediate filament attachment sites, occluding junctions, tight junctions, communicating junctions, gap junctions. Okay. um, नंबर वन इज द इंकरिंग जंक्शंस क्या होगा इसमें एडेरियन जंक्शंस एक्टिन फिलामेंट्स साइट्स डेस्मोसोम्स क्या होगा इंटरमीडिएट फिलामेंट अटैचमेंट साइट्स अपलोडिंग जंक्शंस टाइट जंक्शंस एंड communicating junctions gap junctions. Desmosomes and hemidesmosomes. Desmosomes are macular adherents are circular or oval areas of adjacent cell membranes adhering by intracellular thickening, attachment plaques and containing proteins, desmoplaking and palagoglobin. Cations penetrate the membrane and enter the intercellular region of desmosome. Hemidesmosomes are present on cells of basal layer and provide adhesion between epithelium and connective tissue. Studies indicate that desmosomes and hemidesmosomes differ in their molecular constituency. When these are disturbed, like in pemphigus, there is a epithelial or subepithelial splitting of the epithelial cells. Desmosomes, this is the uh, plasma cell membrane, intermediate filaments, okay, for example, keratin, cytoplasmic plaque. Gap junctions and tight junctions. Okay, gap junctions are nexus is a region where membranes of adjacent cells are run closely together, separated by a small gap. They allow electrical or chemical communications between cells. Okay, gap junction क्या होगा? Is a region where membranes of adjacent cell जहाँ आपके membrane cells के साथ adjacent करती है, closely together, separated by a small gap. ठीक है, separate कैसे होगी? एक small gap के through. They allow electrical or chemical communications between cells. Again, with the gap junctions, क्या है? Cells connected by gap junctions share small molecules, including small intracellular signaling molecules, and can therefore respond to extracellular signals in a coordinated way. Tight junctions are occluding junction is so tightly posed such that intercellular space is absent. Even in maturation, the major changes involved are a change in cell size and shape, synthesis of structural proteins and tonofilaments, appearance of new organelles, production of additional intracellular material. Okay, maturations में क्या होगा? The major changes involved are number one is the change in cell size and shape. Second is the synthesis of structural proteins or tonofilaments. Third क्या होगा? New appearance of new organelles. And fourth is the production of additional intercellular material. Membrane coating are laminate granule, small membrane of the structures in a spinous cell layer, about 250 nanometer in size, and contains glycolipids formed in Golgi bodies. the difference between the keratinized epithelium and the non-keratinized epithelium. Number one is the keratinized epithelium are different from the non-keratinized epithelium. Number one, increase in size from basal layer to prickle cell layer, and non-keratinized epithelium greater increase in cell size. Tonofilaments aggregated in bundles to form tonofibrils. टोनोफिलामेंट्स डिस्पर्स एंड लेस कॉन्सिक्यूटिव्स. ठीक है, कैटेनाइज में क्या है, आपको बंडल की सूरत में टोनोफिब्रिल्स मिलेंगे, और टोनोफिलामेंट्स क्या है ये, जिसमें नॉन कैटेनाइज में क्या होंगे, डिस्पर्स्ड होंगे और लेस कॉन्सिक्यूटिव्स होंगे. Third is the lamellate granules are elongated and contain a series of parallel lamella. At non-keratinized epithelium, lamellate granules appear circular with amorphous content. The contents of these granules are discharged to form a lipid-richer permeability barrier. In non-keratinized epithelium, the contents of these have a different lipid composition and forms a less effective barrier. Cells in superficial part of granular layer develop a noticeable thickening on the inner surface of cell membrane formed by the proteins like involucre. This contributes to the resistance of keratinized layer to chemical solvents. A similar but less obvious thickening is seen in surface cells of non-keratinized epithelium. Keratohyalin granules of the granular cell layer are characteristic in keratinized epithelium. They have mainly the protein ferritin and a sulfur-rich compound laurestrin through the facilitate aggregation and formation of cross links between cytokeratin filaments of keratin layer. As they reach the junction with the keratinized layer, the organelles disappear, the cells dehydrate, flatten, form hexagonal discs called the squamous, and get packed with filaments cross-linked by the diffusal fit bonds. Squamous are lost by a process of discrimination and replaced by cells from underlying layers. The keratinized layer in oral cavity is composed of up to 20 layers of squamous. The tightly packed cytokeratins within an insoluble tough involved makes the layer resistant to mechanical and chemical damage. The surface layer of non-keratinized epithelium consists of cells with loosely arranged filaments that are not dehydrated. Thus, they form a surface that is flexible and tolerant of compression and distension. Suprabasal cells with active nuclei, surface epithelial cell with tight junctions and gap junctions. Non-keratinal sites, histological sections of oral epithelium show cells with dark nuclei surrounded by light hollow nuclear cells, make up 10% of cell population, include melanocytes, Langerhans cells, Merkel cells, and inflammatory cells. नॉन क्रेटोनाइज में क्या होगा, जो सेल इंक्लूड होंगे उसमें कौन से होंगे, मेलिनोसाइट्स, Langerhans cells, Merkel cells, and inflammatory cells. All except Merkel cells lack desmosomal attachments. They have lesser number of tonofilaments and desmosome. None undergo epithelial maturation. No one is the melanocyte or melanin producing cells located in the basal layer of the gingival epithelium. These cells arise from the neural crest, black tonofibrils, desmosomes, and hemidesmosomes are highly dendritic in nature. The most characteristic feature of the melanocyte is the melanosome granule formed within the cytoplasm. A more heavily pigmented gingiva is due to the production of melanin and its subsequent uptake by the epithelial cells. There is a great variability in the location and distribution of melanin in the oral cavity. Melanocytes. Gingiva contains melanocytes, ठीक है? Pigment containing cells with gingiva are brownish hue to the portions of the gingiva. There are also few cells in the connective tissue which have taken up melanin granules, melanophores. Second is the Langerhans cells are found in the stratum spinosum and occasionally in stratum basilar. These cells have long, thin extensions of the cytoplasmic membrane called the dendrites. They can be distinguished from keratinocytes by the absence of desmosomes and tonofilaments. Can be distinguished from the melanocytes by the absence of premelanosomes. Contains the rod-shaped or shaped bulbicans granules, which allows for positive identification at the ultrastructure level. Are antigen presenting cells. They engulf antigens from the external environment and intracellular lysosomes split the antigens into the peptide components. These fragments are then transferred to T lymphocytes. These cells have dendritic extensions and are in the suprabasilar layer. They function as antigen processing cell and are modified macrophages. Merkel cells situated in the basal layer of the gingival epithelium, possesses occasional plasmasomes and tonofilaments, are usually associated with an axon terminal. Merkel cells and the associated axon terminal form a complex that serves as a touch receptor, are usually found in groups or clusters. The cells are situated, Merkel cells are situated in basal layer, not dendritic, contain keratin, and desmosome, said to arise from the division of an epithelial cells, has small membrane-bound vesicles in cytoplasm, sometimes situated adjacent to the nerve fibers. These granules release transmitter across synapse, like gap between it and the fiber triggering impulse. It is sensory and respond to touch. Cells are found in the deep layers of epithelium. They function as tactile proprioceptive cells and are connected to nerve fibers. Yeah. Another name is inflammatory cell. Present variably contains large circular yes. Cytoplasm is scanty with two organelles. No desmosomes and tonofilaments present, associated with the inflammatory response in oral mucosa. They include lymphocytes most commonly More cells and also seen, usually seen associated with Langerhans cells. Are inflammatory cells can be considered a normal component of the oral mucosa. Keratinocytes produce interrelation of keratinocytes and non-keratinocytes. Uh, Keratinocytes produce the cytokines. Cytokines modulate function of Langerhans cells. Langerhans cells produce the cytoskeleton such as interleukin 1 and interleukin 1 activates the T lymphocytes and increase number of receptors to melanocyte secretion hormones and melanocyte secretion hormone acts on the melanocytes and pigmentation. Interference of epithelium and lamina propria. The junction of epithelium and the lamina propria is an undulating interface at which the papilla of the connective tissue interdigitates with the epithelial ridges. This arrangement increases the surface area of the attachment, enabling applied forces to be distributed over the greater area. Masticative mucosa has a greater number, while a lining mucosa has lesser and shorter uh, undulations. These junctions is also important for metabolic exchange as the epithelium has no blood vessels. Basement membrane in histological sections, basement membrane between epithelium and connective tissue appears structure less bend and stains with yes, stains. Components of basal complex number one is the lamina lucida, bullous pemphigoid antigen laminae. Lamina densa 45 millimeter thick. Diphod collagen is chicken or Y configuration. Incur, incurring fibrils 50 millimeter thick type 7 collagen and the collagen of connective tissue type 1 and type 3. This is a phenotype and this is a lamina. Hemidesmosomcy present condensation of Gaulis, lymphoid antigen, and intermediate filament associated protein. Cytokeratin filaments loop into the hemidesmosomes. Proteins of integrin family traverse the membrane and enter the lamina lucida. Interest to the lamina densa are small loops, finely banded fibrils called the encouraging fibrils. This is the lamina lucida, this is the lamina densa, hemidesmosomes, this is the keratin filaments, okay? This is the desmosomes. Apply the connective tissue supporting the oral epithelium divided for descriptive purpose into a superficial papillary layer. Collagen fibers thin and loosely arranged. Several capillary roots present. Deeper reticular meaning net-like layer. Collagen fibers arranged in thick bundles parallel to surface. Lamina propria consists of cells, vessels, neural elements, and fibril fibers embedded in amorphous ground substance. Cells are fibroblasts, principal cells responsible for maintaining tissue integrity by the regulating cell turnover. Cigar-shaped fusiform are star-shaped stellate with long processes that lie parallel to collagen fibers. Nuclei contain one or more prominent nuclei. Numerous mitochondria, extensive granular endoplasmic reticulum, prominent Golgi complex, and numerous membrane bound vesicle. Low profile except in wound healing. Participates in wound contraction. In certain cases like gingival overgrowth, secrete more wrong substances than normal. Macrophages, histiocytes, innerstadial fusiform cells, plasma membrane smaller and denser nuclei, less granular endoplasmic reticulum. Cytoplasm contains lysosomes. Ingest damaged tissue or foreign material in phagocytic vacuoles. Crossing of ingested material may be important in increasing indigeneity before it present uh, into lymphocytes. Two types, melanophage and cytophage. Resultant brownish color appears clinically as aqueous. Mast cells, larger spherical and elliptical mononuclear cells, contains large number of intensely staining granules that occupy cytoplasm, stained with basic dyes due to presence of heparin and histamine, are found in association with the small blood vessels so to maintain normal tissue stability and vascular homeostasis. Inflammatory cells present in the event of intensity in the event of an injury or connective tissue in the event of an injury or as part of the disease process. When in significant numbers, they influence the behavior of the overlying epithelium by releasing cytokinase. Acute conditions, chronic conditions, lymphocytes, plasma cells, monocots, and macrophages. Fibers, collagen fibers are type 1 and type 3 in lamina propria, and type 4 and type in the basal lamina, type 5 in inflamed tissue. Elastic fibers, elastin is responsible for elastic properties of fiber. Second is a glycoprotein with microfibril morphology. Initially, fibers consist entirely of microfibrils until they mature and get replaced by elastin. Ground substance consists of heterogeneous proteins, carbohydrate complexes permeated by the tissue fluid, chemically progalactins and glycoproteins, proteoglycans, polypeptides core with attached hyaluron sulfate, varicin, decorin, biglycan, and sandican. Interactions of these cells surface molecules important in modulating behavior and function of cells. Glycoproteins branch polypeptide chains to which few simple exons are attached. Blood supply of the mucosa is richer and much more profuse than skin. Blood supply greatest in gingiva. Human oral mucosa lacks arteriovenous shunts but has rich anastomosis of arterioles and capillaries contributing to its ability to heal more rapidly than skin after an injury. ओरल रीजन एंड सबटर्मिनल ब्रांचेस अपर लिप क्या होगा सुपीरियर लेबियल आर्टरी अपर जिंजावा इंटीरियर इसमें लिंगुअल बकल पोस्टीरियर इंटीरियर सुपीरियर एल्वुलर आर्टरी मेजर पेरिटन आर्टरी बकल आर्टरी पोस्टीरियर सुपीरियर एल्वुलर आर्टरी हार्ड पैलेट में क्या होगा? मेजर पैलेटिन आर्टरी, नेसोपैलेटिन आर्टरी एंड स्फेनोपैलेटिन आर्टरी। सॉफ्ट पैलेट में क्या सप्लाई करेगी? माइनर पैलेटिन आर्टरी, cheeks, buccal artery, branches of the facial artery, posterior alveolar artery, infraorbital artery, lower lip, inferior labial artery, mental artery, branch of inferior alveolar artery. Over gingival, interior buccal, interior lingual, posterior lingual, and posterior buccal, interior lingual and incisive artery, sublingual artery, posterior lingual, inferior alveolar artery, sublingual artery, and posterior buccal, inferior alveolar artery, and buccal artery. Floor of mouth, sublingual artery, and branch of the lingual artery, and tongue, interior two-thirds, posterior third, deep lingual artery, dorsal lingual artery. हम नर्व्स ट्राई करेंगे। ये आपको जो लेक्चर पढ़ाया है कुछ समझ आया है आप लोगों को? ये क्वेश्चन? व्हाट इज द ओरल म्यूकोसा? आंसर मी, व्हाट इज द ओरल म्यूकोसा? ओरल म्यूकोसा क्या है? व्हाट आर द टाइप्स ऑफ ओरल म्यूकोसा? Secretory म्यूकोसा कहाँ पे प्रेजेंट होता है? इन जावा और लाइनिंग म्यूकोसा? एंड स्पेशलाइज्ड म्यूकोसा? स्पेशलाइज्ड म्यूकोसा? Inshallah, tomorrow discuss the nerve supply of the oral mucosa. Any question?